figured tonight I might as well be brave with my blogging and just decide to talk about basically chronicling how the last two horrific weeks have been for me. And, oh geez, this is going to be a tough one since I'm not used to really. Okay, I am used to talking about serious topics, but it isn't something that comes up too terribly often. I prefer to keep this profile a bit more, you know, geeky. I don't really like to let too much of myself out there, but in this particular case, I feel that it would be therapeutic of me and somewhat rewarding to sort of let out some thoughts here. I just went to my grandmother's funeral just a few days ago, and the impact of that is still taking a while to wear off. The history behind the particular event that I speak of, the event as it went on, is a couple of weeks ago you may have noticed that I posted an entry about a family emergency that happened, and I may not be making videos so often. What ended up happening is that I made videos just as often just for the pure escapism of it. But basically, my grandmother, who's also one of the big financial people within the family, basically, she kept us together for the most part. Well, she died of a stroke just recently, and now we have no idea what the hell to do. It's not just the tragic death of a loved one, it's, oh my god, of everything around us is pretty much crumbling. The economy is so horrific right now, and it's really no excuse. I probably could have gotten a job sooner, but now it's absolutely imperative that I go out and go, oh, hello, I am, that just decided to interrupt me. You probably heard that little bing in the background. But now it's imperative that I actually go out and get a job because, well, we need the money very desperately. And all of a sudden, all of these different kinds of pressures that I didn't ordinarily have, different sorts of expectations, are being put on myself by myself, pretty much. Because, let's face it, I was focusing on my education for the most part, going to college and everything, and having a bit of fun on the side, dabbling in my hobbies, maybe writing every so often, but most importantly, going through school. And now, I'm not sure if that's going to be quite as easy as it was before. I mean, school was something that just sort of came naturally to me. Occasionally, I didn't always get the best grades, but for the most parts, I got A's and B's, and I was very proud of them. Now it's like, now everything's just screwed. Let's talk about this at the funeral. One of the big things that really helped to put some things in perspective for me, and this is going to sound terribly morbid, is actually before the service, I took a little tour of the graveyard, and I started reading all of the different graves that were lined up. And you really begin to realize the life and death cycle that goes on, really, when you're actually just looking around at huge masses of bodies that have been buried under the ground, and here's these little gravestones marking each and every individual. And I start going through, looking how long they lived, looking at their names, and I was absolutely amazed by how many people seem to die young, at about 19 or 26 or whatever, and it kind of hit home that maybe I'm not going to be on this earth for very long. You never know. I might get ran over by a truck, or who knows, alien invasion might come, and a spherical whatever thing from the planet Zulu will just me right in the middle. That's right, that's a new word. That's when I can't think of anything because I'm biting down particular emotional responses. But you start going through, and you begin to realize natural process, whatever, and it really put the whole funeral in perspective. And so when we're all sitting there saying goodbye to this woman who had been such a big part of our lives, and I'm not going to say that she was perfect, because she was far, far from perfect. It's one of the big things that I have kind of dreaded about funerals, and it's something I hope nobody does at my own, is everybody seems to love to deny the fact that the person that had died was anything short of perfect. Whenever it's like, she was a godly woman, she was a wonderful woman, she was the best woman that anybody had ever known, and she was a wonderful provider, and this and this. And I don't know why. It's always bugged me because it seems like so terribly dishonest. Why can't we just say we're going to remember the good times and we're going to remember the bad times and we're going to remember her for what she was rather than changing it all around to fit some kind of fantasy image? That to me isn't a proper send off of a human being. But, I wasn't in charge of the funeral service, so I'm not really allowed to make little quibbles about this sort of stuff, and I'm not terribly within the Christian mindset, so I suppose that's not really something that I should be pushing myself on here. Like, my grandmother was Christian, so she got a very Christian funeral. I have to respect that. I do respect that. I was the first one to actually go up when they asked, would anybody like to share their thoughts on this woman. I actually walked up, first one up there. I wasn't planning on doing this. I didn't even think about it when I was sitting there, and it just felt like the right thing to do. And so here I am, standing next to the coffin, which will soon be buried underground, and just knowing that her body is within this coffin. This is really the last goodbye, and I just simply pretended like she was looking down at me, and I just let the words speak for themselves, and it was a very, very interesting moment because I didn't actually stumble around quite as much as I thought I would. I think I'm a very good speaker when I'm given the... Now it sounds like I'm bragging about something, which really is not the case. I'm just like... I think I can get across thoughts very well when I'm inspired to do so. I think occasionally poetic language can come to me, as unbelievably as that sounds. It was... Okay, I did stumble around a little bit, but it was like that moment where everything sort of came together to me, and I was in acceptance that, okay, life is going to be different now. She's gone, she's in a better place, or she just took, as my dad would call it, an organic nap. I honestly don't know. I am still of the mindset, I am, that when we die, our brains shut off, and that's basically all that happens. That's my particular scientific thing. If anything else happens, I will be thrilled to discover it when I'm dead, but other than that, I don't really believe in the concept of the soul or whatever. I believe that most of what makes a human being is what we're born with genetically and environment. I think you can prove that is the basis of what makes a human being more than a spiritual entity. But anyways, now I'm getting into a whole nother territory. But it was after I left. I was at acceptance until the next 3 days later. House is quiet. House is absolutely dead quiet. The rest of the family, who knows what they're thinking, right? We're just sitting here in this big old mass of waste of sort of depression. We're all kind of looking around at each other like, oh, well, what the hell are we supposed to do now? And I guess that's just the real question right now is, what do you do? And I've kind of made a mental list to myself, and it's kind of like, well, you just keep on doing what you were doing, and you stay positive, and you hope for the best in these sorts of situations. I'm not about to start to, feel sorry for myself about what has happened. I do feel sorrow. I do get horribly depressed, and sometimes angry. Anger is a very interesting reaction. I've had more outbursts in the last few days than would be typical for me usually. I'm usually a more mellow person in that sort of respect. But no, more yelling and such than is typical. But I always apologize afterwards, and I hardly ever mean what I say within those particular instances. So yeah, it's going to be really tough. And it might end up being that I make more of these sorts of entries, but I will most likely mark them as serious. That way, those of you who are just watching for the sake of funny anime commentaries or whatever, or just off-the-wall comments on movies, you don't have to deal with this kind of thing. I think this is more a for me thing, and not only that, As a blogger, I always respect someone who lets himself out there for people, who basically lets them know what's going on. That way, you have the viewer has more connection, or rather, in this case, more the listener has more of a connection with the person who is actually blogging. So, this is MPig, aka my profile is great, and I am signing out. Tomorrow I will record a more enthusiastic Mutterings, most likely.